kids, last time in the secret woods, we learned about Ruth and how she had a really bad temper. And Ruth ran away because her Aunt Margaret told her that she was going to have to go to a boarding school. Well, we left off when Ruth was found by the minister in the church. Let's see what happens. On the way to the minister's house, I told him my story and why I had run away. He said that he would call my aunt to tell her that I was all right, for she must be worried. I could have breakfast with him before I started home. We went to his study. I noticed a picture over his desk. It was a picture of a lamb lost on a rocky mountainside. Overhead hovered a fierce bird waiting for the lamb to die, and the lamb looked up, waiting to be rescued. The shepherd had heard the cries, for he was leaning over the cliff with his crook, ready to rescue the lamb. In another minute, he would pick up the lamb and take it safely home. I was so interested in this picture that I scarcely heard the minister enter the room and put down a tray of food for me. How good the food was! I was hungry. "Isn't that a nice picture?" I remarked. "It reminds me of a shepherd near my home. One of Mr. Tandy's lambs ran away and got lost, and he went to find it. It was all tangled up in a thorn bush, and it took Mr. Tandy a long time to get it loose. His hands were all scratchy and bleeding when he finished." "Ruth, why did the lamb in the picture run away? He has a nice shepherd, and the pasture is very green." "Why didn't the lamb stay there?" the minister asked kindly. "Well," I answered thoughtfully, "I expect he thought it looked nicer and went to see. And when he got lost, he couldn't get back." "You are right," said my new friend. "The lamb probably struggled all night to get back to the sheepfold. But then he stopped trying and started to cry. The shepherd had been searching for the lamb and heard the lamb. So he gathered it in his arms and carried it back safely to the other sheep." "I ran away too last night, didn't I whispered. "You did," answered the minister. "And do you know, when I found you in the church, I thought to myself, here is one of God's lost lambs trying to get back by herself. But you'll never be able to do it, Ruth. There's only one person who can take you back into God's way and keep you there. That is the Lord Jesus Christ, who calls himself the Good Shepherd." "Then why doesn't he do it?" I asked. "Because you are still trying to get back without him," came the answer. "You must ask him to find you because you are lost. He's been waiting a long time for you to call to him to save you. He died on the cross to forgive your sins and to help you to be good. You must learn to listen to his voice, and he will teach you how to be good." The kind minister gave me a little copy of the picture for my very own. "I will come back and tell you when I do it," I replied. On the way home, I kept looking at the picture. I decided to find a quiet spot before I reached home, and there to ask the Good Shepherd to find me and make me one of his lambs. I hoped he was listening. He was, for I told him of my naughtiness and asked him to forgive me. And he did. How happy I was! My aunt was waiting at the door. She had been crying. I ran to her and hugged her. "I'm sorry. I'll try to be good. Please don't send me away. I won't ever be naughty again," I cried. I decided to visit Mr. Tandy, the shepherd, for there was something that I wanted to ask him. I had thought much about the Good Shepherd and often looked at the pictures the minister had given me. I dug out my Bible and read the story about the sheep that was lost. I almost knew it by heart, but I had never heard the shepherd's voice. And I wanted so much to have him speak to me. Perhaps if I asked Mr. Tandy, He could tell me how I could hear the shepherd speak to me. It was a lovely day, and I decided it would be a nice day to visit the lambs. I was very red in the face when I reached the sheepfolds because I had climbed the hills so fast. There, I found Mr. Tandy mending the gate, and I ran straight to him. "I've come to tell you something," I said, quite out of breath. I was naughty and ran away. I stayed in the church all by myself all night long, in the dark, and in the morning the minister found me. He took me to his house, and he showed me a picture of this little lost lamb. It looked a lot like yours, and there was also a shepherd with wounds in his hands. The lamb was like me, and the shepherd was Jesus, because he came to look for me when he died for me. So on the way home, I asked him to find me and save me and make me good. Now I'm his lamb, and I belong to him. "Thank God for that, little maid," Mr. Tandy said, looking happy. "If you belong to him now, you'll belong to him forever. No man can ever pluck you out of his hand." "Mr. Tandy," I asked, "are you one of his sheep?" "Yes, I've been one of his flock for nearly 50 years, he answered. "Then," I went on eagerly, "have you ever heard his voice? It says that his sheep hear his voice, but I've listened and listened, and he never says anything to me, and I do want to hear him." "I'm going to call my sheep, lassie," he said, "and you watch what happens." I watched while Mr. Tandy gave a low, clear call. Every sheep in the meadow lifted its head and came a little closer to Mr. Tandy. But there were some by a hedge who paid no attention. "Why don't they hear you?" I asked Mr. Tandy. "They hear me, but they don't know my voice from the other shepherd. They belonged to another shepherd, but he is sick and I'm taking care of them. After a week or two, they'll know my voice like the other sheep," Mr. Tandy explained. "You've only belonged to the shepherd for a few days, so maybe you haven't learned to pick out his voice. Do you ever want to do something naughty, like losing your temper?" "Oh, yes, often," I replied. "Well then," Mr. Tandy went on, "you remember this. Next time you want to lose your temper, remember there are two voices speaking to you. There's the bad one, trying to get you angry and stamp your foot. But wait a minute. There's a good voice. That's the voice of the shepherd. He will be asking you to be good. If you obey his voice, he'll speak to you again and again. Then too, when you read your Bible, the words will be those of the shepherd." "Thank you very much, Mr. Tandy. I won't ever lose my temper again," I called as I hurried down the hill. And I managed pretty well for a while. My aunt and my brother Philip wondered what had happened to me. I waited for a chance to tell them about my shepherd. "Auntie," I cried one day, hopping up and down on one foot, "Mrs. Robinson has invited me to visit her on Saturday, her and the twin babies. And I can push the carriage and put them to bed. I can go, can I? Do say yes." "Who is Mrs. Robinson, Ruth?" she asked. "She's the minister's wife. You remember, he found me in the church when I ran away. They have twin babies, and I am invited to go and play with them. Please let me go," I begged. "The answer will have to be no this time. I told Miss Montgomery you would go and play with her niece on Saturday," answered Aunt Margaret. "But Auntie," I stormed, "I hate Miss Montgomery, and I hate her niece, and I hate to go to her house. Oh, please say I needn't go." But I could see that my aunt had already made up her mind. "I won't go," I shouted. "I'll go where I want, and you can't stop me." My aunt took a hold of my arm. "Go straight to bed," she said firmly. "I thought that you were trying to be better, but you're still naughty." "I don't care," I muttered and slammed the door behind me. did care. I cared very much. I crawled in bed and thought my heart would break. I buried my face in the pillow and cried and cried. That evening, I heard a voice beside me. It was my aunt. "What's the matter, Ruth?" she asked. "It's the shepherd," I sobbed. "I lost my temper, and perhaps I won't belong to him anymore. Oh, Auntie, do you think I will be able to come back to him if I'm good?" "What are you talking about, Ruth?" my aunt asked. She was staring at me as if I had lost my senses. I found the picture of the shepherd which I had in my Bible. I showed it to her, explaining how the minister had given it to me. Now I belong to the shepherd, but today I didn't listen to him, and I lost my temper. Do you think he will forgive me, Auntie? Do you really think he will? I asked. My aunt was thoughtful. She spoke quietly. "If you are really sorry for being naughty and will try to be good, I am sure God will forgive you. You'd better ask him." Her voice was very gentle and sad. "You know the story, don't you, Auntie?" I asked timidly. Something in her face made me feel uncertain. "Oh, yes," she answered, "but I have sort of forgotten about it lately." My aunt stayed with me while I drank some milk and ate cookies that she had brought me. When I finished, she kissed me goodnight and left me very drowsy and quite comforted. Before I fell asleep, I buried my face in my pillow and breathed out a prayer for forgiveness to the one who stood close beside me and who cared equally for lost lambs, fallen sparrows, sleeping babies, and naughty girls. Philip and I had many happy hours at our hideout in the woods. Almost every day we watched the birds and studied all about their nest and the baby birds. Philip's notebook about birds was getting thicker and thicker. One day we had a real surprise when we went to enter our wigwam headquarters. Philip was the one who made the discovery. He had gone in first to hide the cookies and sandwiches that we had brought for later on as a snack. He came out of the tiny door and whispered, "There's someone in our wigwam." "Who?" I inquired indignantly. "It's our wigwam, and no one else may enter it." "It's a boy," Philip replied as he re-entered the hideout. Inside, Philip said, "I say, boy, this is our wigwam, so you better get out." "Won't," the boy said. "Anyway, I don't want your old wigwam, 'cause I can make a better one." Then out came the boy, about as big as I was. His clothes were ragged and rather small for him, but his eyes were as bright as blackbirds, and his thin face was brown as a berry. I liked him as soon as I saw him. He was about to go away when Philip said, "Don't go. We'd like you to share our wigwam. Why don't you stay and have some cookies with us?" Soon we were sitting down and getting acquainted. The boy ate all the food. I'm sure he was very hungry indeed. He ate the last crumb and licked the jam off the paper that the sandwiches had been wrapped in. We found out his name was Terry and that he lived in the woods near the stream. From that moment on, Terry was our friend. Better still, we knew that he looked upon us as friends. Nearly every day we met him in the woods and showed us where secret nests were and many things about birds. He knew all about life in the woods, for he had spent all his life there. Terry taught us how to climb trees, and he was as fast as a monkey in getting to the top of any tree. Philip and I could never be as fast as Terry was. He would go where we could not, and report to us about the eggs in the nest. The three of us had many happy days that summer. Always, we brought our lunch with us and shared with Terry. We knew he must be very poor, and we learned that he lived alone with his mother. One day, something dreadful happened. All three of us were up in a tree, and then suddenly, what's going to happen? Will Ruth, Philip, and Terry be all right? Well, you'll have to wait for next time to find out what's going to happen.